Somewhere on the internet right now, there is a headline claiming to know exactly why a man married the woman he loves. Not because he loves her. Not because they built a life together. But because of something darker, something hidden, something the headline promises to reveal. That headline is about Abby Hensel, one half of the world's most famous conjoined twins, and her husband Josh Bowling. And the story underneath it says more about us, the audience, than it does about either of them. This is not a story about a scandal. It is a story about how scandal gets manufactured out of thin air, and why conjoined twins in particular have spent decades being turned into raw material for exactly that kind of manufacturing. To understand how a private marriage became a fetish theory with millions of views, you first have to understand who Abby and Brittany Hensel are, how long the public has been staring at them, and what happens when real people are treated less like people and more like a phenomenon to be explained. Abby and Brittany Hensel were born in Minnesota in 1990 as dicephalic conjoined twins, meaning they share one torso but each has her own head, her own spine, her own heart, and her own personality. Abby controls the right side of their shared body, Brittany the left. They grew up in a small Minnesota community, raised by parents who made an early decision that shaped everything that followed. They chose not to pursue a separation surgery that doctors said carried an extremely high risk that one or both girls would not survive it. Instead, the girls were raised to live, as fully as possible, exactly as they were born. That decision produced two young women who learned to walk, run, swim, ride bikes, play sports, and eventually drive a car together, each controlling her own side of every shared movement. It also produced, almost inevitably, two of the most publicly watched women in America. Abby and Brittany first appeared on national television on The Oprah Winfrey Show in 1996, when they were small children, and they later landed on the cover of Life magazine. In 2008, a documentary followed them as teenagers. In 2012, TLC gave them their own reality series, Abby and Brittany, which ran for 8 episodes and followed them as college graduates stepping into adult life. From the very first episode, the twins addressed the obvious head-on, acknowledging that people had been curious about them since the day they were born. That is an important detail, because it tells you something about how Abby and Brittany have always understood their own visibility. They were not naive about the attention. They leaned into a certain amount of it, on their own terms, through documentaries and one season of television, and then they did something a lot of people who go viral as children never get the chance to do. They stepped back. After 2012, the twins largely withdrew from the spotlight. Abby became a teacher. They built private adult lives in Minnesota, out of the public eye, for over a decade. Then, in March 2024, that privacy cracked. Public records and reporting revealed that Abby had quietly married Josh Bowling, a U.S. Army veteran and hospice nurse, and that the wedding had actually taken place back in November 2021. In other words, the internet did not learn about a wedding as it happened. It learned about a marriage that had already existed, privately, for roughly 3 years. Outlets including Today and the New York Post confirmed the marriage through public records, and footage from the ceremony later surfaced through social media posts. From Bowling's own family, Abby and Brittany themselves eventually shared a short recap video of the day on TikTok. That is, in full, the confirmed factual foundation of this story. A woman got married. Her family kept it private for a few years, which is an ordinary and unremarkable thing for any couple to do. When the news became public, it traveled fast, because Abby and Brittany Hensel are, whether they like it or not, public figures with an enormous built-in audience curious about every detail of their lives. And this is exactly the point in the story where sensationalism tends to take over, because a quiet, 3-year-old marriage between two adults is not, on its own, a very dramatic headline. It does not generate views the way a scandal does. So almost immediately, speculation started filling in the blanks that the couple had deliberately left private. Reddit threads full of guesses about the relationship structure appeared well before the marriage was even confirmed. Once it was confirmed, tabloid-style coverage began packaging ordinary facts, like the couple choosing not to publicly announce their wedding, as if they were clues in a mystery that needed solving. Some outlets ran pieces literally structured around lists of weird or surprising things about the marriage, most of which amounted to nothing more than the couple's decision to keep details of their own relationship to themselves. This is where a specific and much more serious claim enters the picture, the one baked directly into the title of videos like the one this piece is responding to, the idea that Bowling married Abby not out of love, but because of some kind of fetish for her physical condition. It is worth being extremely clear about what this claim actually is. It is not something Josh Bowling has said. It is not something Abby or Brittany have said. It is not a claim that has been reported, confirmed, or supported by any court document, interview, or verified source. It is speculation, invented and repeated in online content, dressed up with narrative details, imagined internal thoughts, and dramatic music, until it starts to feel like established fact simply because it has been said with enough confidence and repeated often enough. That distinction matters enormously, because what is actually known about Bowling paints a very different picture. Before meeting Abby, he served in the U.S. Army as a combat medic, deployed with the 1st Cavalry Division to both Iraq and Afghanistan, where he treated wounded soldiers under extreme conditions. After leaving the military, he became a registered nurse in Minnesota specializing in hospice care, work centered on providing comfort and dignity at the end of life rather than crisis intervention. He has also spoken, in a 2021 interview, about carrying the emotional weight of what he witnessed in the military. None of that biography proves anything about his private feelings toward his wife, of course, but it does illustrate something important. The fetish narrative did not emerge from anything Bowling revealed about himself. It was constructed entirely from the outside, by strangers filling a privacy vacuum with the most sensational explanation available. It is also true that Bowling's life includes a previous marriage, a daughter from that relationship, and a paternity dispute involving his ex-wife that played out in court between 2023 and 2024. Those are documented, public record facts, and it is fair for coverage to mention them as part of a fuller picture of who he is. But notice the difference between reporting that a paternity case existed and resolved, which courts confirmed by April 2024 found he was not the father in question, versus using that same case as circumstantial evidence to imply something sinister about his marriage to Abby. One is journalism. The other is narrative construction dressed up as journalism, and the line between them is exactly where a lot of this kind of content quietly crosses over. So why do stories about conjoined twins specifically attract this particular flavor of speculation generation after generation? Part of the answer is medical and historical. Conjoined twins have been treated as objects of public fascination for centuries, from 19th-century exhibition performers whose lives were controlled by promoters, to 20th-century sideshow attractions, to today's viral clips and reaction videos. The framing has changed, the language has softened, but the underlying dynamic of a body treated as spectacle rather than a full and private person has proven remarkably durable. When you grow up as a subject of that kind of gaze, as Abby and Brittany did from early childhood, ordinary parts of adult life like a marriage almost automatically get read through the same lens the public was trained to use on you as a child. Not, who are these two people, but, what is unusual here, and what can we say about it? Layered on top of that historical pattern is a very modern, very simple economic incentive. Content built around mystery, betrayal, and hidden motives performs better than content built around a couple got married and kept it private, which is their right. A video titled around a happy, ordinary marriage does not promise a reveal. A video that promises to expose someone's secret fetish does. The Hensel twins' actual, well-documented life story, one of resilience, cooperation, and hard-won independence, gets used mainly as a slow build-up, a few minutes of biography before the real hook arrives. The genuinely admirable parts of their story become packaging for the sensational part, rather than the story itself. It is worth sitting with what that does to real people on the receiving end. Abby and Brittany have spoken publicly, if briefly, about exactly this pressure. When their marriage news broke, they posted online acknowledging that the internet reaction had grown loud, and later posted a message reminding their audience that public familiarity with parts of their lives does not mean the public actually knows them. Those are not the words of women naive about their own fame. They are the words of two adults who understand precisely how quickly curiosity about them curdles into something more invasive, and who are trying, in a small way, to hold a boundary anyway. None of this means audiences should be discouraged from finding the Hensel twins' life story compelling, because in an honest sense, it genuinely is. Two people learning to coordinate a single shared body well enough to play volleyball, ride bicycles, and separately pass individual driving tests is a real, remarkable, and well-documented achievement. Their parents' decision, early on, to reject a high-risk separation surgery and instead raise two daughters to live fully as themselves is a story with real emotional weight that does not need embellishment. What sensationalized coverage does is take that genuine, sturdy foundation and bolt an unverified, damaging accusation onto the end of it, betting that viewers will not notice, or will not care, where the documented facts stop and the invented drama begins. That gap is worth noticing, not just for the sake of Abby, Britney, and Josh Bowling specifically, but as a habit of mind for consuming this entire genre of content. When a headline promises to reveal someone's secret motive, especially a motive involving a person's body, disability, or medical condition, it is worth asking a simple question before believing it. Has this person actually said this? Has it been reported by anyone with direct access to them, or has a storyteller simply decided it makes for a better hook than the truth? More often than viewers realize, the honest answer is the second one, and the real story, quieter and less shocking, was sitting right there in the public record the entire time. A private wedding. A 3-year silence chosen on purpose. A veteran turned hospice nurse. Two sisters who built an entire life out of cooperation long before anyone asked them to explain their marriage to strangers. If there is a single lesson worth taking from this particular case, it is not really about conjoined twins at all. It is about the gap between a person's actual, documented life and the story a content creator can build in the space that privacy leaves behind. Abby and Brittany Hensel spent their childhood being watched by people trying to understand their bodies. As adults, they are now being watched by people trying to invent their motives. The difference between the two might feel small on a screen, but for the people living it, it is the difference between being seen and being used. What do you think separates genuine curiosity from exploitation when it comes to stories like this one? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if this perspective was useful to you, consider subscribing for more grounded looks at the stories behind the headlines.